It's September 6, 2023, and these are your headlines. Today's hearing in the impeachment trial of Attorney General Ken Paxton in the Senate picked up where yesterday's left off with the interview of the prosecution's first witness, Jeff Mateer. Mateer was the former first assistant attorney general under Ken Paxton and one of the whistleblowers in 2020 that alleged Paxton had engaged in unethical acts and abuse of office in order to help real estate developer Nate Paul. Now, consider this. Much of the conversation surrounding those whistleblowers has been about Nate Paul, who has been painted by the prosecution and Paxton's detractors as someone who wanted to use the Attorney General's office as essentially his own private lawyer. That's been their accusation. And Mateer and a group of other employees reported Paxton's alleged actions to the FBI. And yet, it was revealed that Jeff Mateer said he had never actually met Nate Paul, which was a fascinating revelation to see. Mateer alleged that Attorney General Paxton directed his staff to write an advisory opinion saying foreclosure proceedings could not happen due to COVID back in 2020. They alleged that this was done as part of a process to help Nate Paul. He also alleged that Attorney General Paxton inappropriately hired attorney Brandon Kamek as special counsel to investigate claims by Nate Paul of misconduct by state and federal officials, including the Texas Department of Public Safety and the FBI, and that Paxton had gone around the normal approval process to do so in order to hire Kamek. But an interesting moment happened when Rusty Hardin, one of the lawyers working for the House against Paxton, asked Mateer if it was illegal for the Attorney General to sign the contract outside of the normal approval process. That question proved difficult to answer, with Mateer saying he believed it violated policy procedures and that at the time he thought it might be unlawful because he believed the investigation itself was unlawful. Mateer also said he believed Paxton may have been blackmailed due to an extramarital affair that he says Paxton revealed to his staff and campaign employees. What was particularly striking about Mateer's testimony was that none of it was new. Just about everything he said had been reported years ago, maybe 3 years ago, and was discussed during the 2022 election when George P. Bush attempted to defeat Paxton. You might remember Bush, of course, lost that election 2-1. So then it was time for the defense to cross-examine Jeff Mateer, with attorney Tony Busby leading the questioning. That was when the fireworks started. Mateer claimed he deleted his text messages regularly. He didn't have them. He said that he didn't ask Paxton when he had questions about some of the actions that the special counsel had taken, and instead went to the FBI and to the governor's office, where he met with members of Governor Abbott's staff, including Louise Sines, who was the governor's chief of staff at the time. Why did he go to the governor's office? He also admitted that he'd been in contact with Dick Trabolsi when he resigned. Trabolsi is one of the leaders of Texans for Lawsuit Reform, a group that has been opposed to Paxton for years now and has been suspected to be working behind the scenes and have worked behind the scenes pushing the impeachment forward. You can look, for example, just a couple weeks ago when they put out a statement telling senators not to vote to dismiss the charges against Paxton. It was also pointed out that the same day that Mateer signed a letter alongside the other whistleblowers alleging illegal behavior from Paxton, George P. Bush reactivated his law license ahead of his campaign, leading Tony Busby to remark that there are no coincidences in Austin. Tony McDonald, a Central Texas attorney and our general counsel here, made a great observation on Twitter I want to share here. He said, "The House put up Mateer as their key witness, but it's clear the revolt in the office was not his decision. He was a follower. He's still unsure of himself. So the question is, who was the prime mover on this effort to remove Ken Paxton?" That is an interesting question, and it's one that may soon become more clear as this trial continues. Now, don't be mistaken. There is a lot of trial left, a lot of witnesses, testimony, cross-examination, etc. We've got nearly 48 hours of this. But this first round exposed some cracks in the prosecution. After all, if Jeff Mateer is a key witness, someone who has worked very closely with Paxton, was the first assistant attorney general, his testimony today was anything but groundbreaking, and we certainly saw that in the cross-examination. In other news, House Speaker Dade Phelan, who voted to impeach Paxton in the House in May, has become the target of another county's Republican Party. This time, the Liberty County GOP unanimously censured Phelan for violating the principles of the Republican Party, in part because of his appointments of Democrats to leadership positions in direct contradiction to the legislative priorities of the Texas GOP. This isn't the first county to censure Phelan. It doesn't look like it'll be the last. Other members of the House, like State Representative Andrew Murr, have also received heat at home, in his case, in part for his role in the impeachment of Ken Paxton. Andrew Murr is the chair of the House General Investigating Committee. He spoke yesterday, actually, and gave the opening argument for impeaching Paxton in the Senate. But in fact, these are the kinds of consequences every Republican in the legislature who has supported the impeachment of Paxton has to be worried about right now back at home, given how clear the party has been in opposition. Phelan has already garnered a couple of opponents in the Republican primary, teeing up a big election in March. Lastly, as parents continue discovering concerns of safety and indoctrination in Texas's government schools, data from the Texas Education Agency shows that a trend towards homeschooling, noticed during the COVID era of a few years ago, is continuing. The Texas Homeschool Coalition submitted an open records request for data from the Texas Education Agency regarding the number of withdrawals from government schools to homeschooling. In the 2021-22 school year, there were nearly 30,000 withdrawals for students in grades 7 through 12. This number indicates the record highs of withdrawals during the COVID-19 era are continuing, as the 2020 to 2021 school year saw about the same amount of students in grades 7 through 12 leave government schools. This is part of a big trend that we have been seeing for the past several years, and we've been looking at here at Texas Scorecard especially. And it really should come as no surprise, especially as we've seen horror stories of the dark side of public education. By the way, if you haven't already checked out, the first 2 episodes of Exposed Season 6 are available now on your podcasting platforms that look into exactly this issue. But it's not only that, it's also the increasingly woke curriculum, it's pornography being made available in schools, etc. All of these issues will be center stage later this year when the legislature is called back for a special session on education, including school choice. That's expected to come likely in October. For more news of the day, go to texasscorecard.com.
No ads, no paywalls, no government grants, and no corporate masters. Just real news for real Texans. This is Texas Scorecard.